The engine of the truck was already running when Nadia arrived at the motor pool at 4 in the morning. She did not need to check the time. Her body had been waking at 3:50 for 2 years straight. Before the alarm, before the first call to prayer drifted over the base walls from somewhere out in the dark city. She pulled on her jacket, laced her boots in the exact same order she always did. Left first, then right, and walked out into the cool desert air without saying a word to anyone. Nobody said a word to her either. That was the thing about being invisible. It was not loud. It did not announce itself. It simply existed, the way dust existed on every surface of the base, on every vehicle, on every person who had been there longer than a month. You stopped noticing dust after a while. The men in the motor pool had stopped noticing Nadia Okafor in roughly the same amount of time. She was 26 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and built like someone who had grown up on a farm where the work did not wait for you to be ready. Her shoulders were broad and her hands were steady, and her eyes were the kind of dark that seemed to take everything in without giving much back. She had a small scar above her left eyebrow from the corner of a cabinet door when she was 9 years old, and she had a way of standing very still when other people were moving that made some of them nervous without knowing why. She had been driving for the United States Army for 2 years and 4 months. She had driven in rain so thick it was like looking through a waterfall. She had driven in heat that made the road ahead appear to dissolve into liquid shimmer. She had driven through neighborhoods where children threw stones and neighborhoods where old men sat in plastic chairs and waved, and she had never once been entirely sure which kind of neighborhood she was driving into until she was already in it. 112 convoys. 0 incidents. The number existed in a log somewhere, in a folder, in a filing cabinet that nobody opened unless something had gone wrong. Nothing had gone wrong on any of Nadia's runs, so her file sat there, in the dark, undisturbed. Her commanding officer, a captain named Gerald Brent, was a man who used names like tools, only when he needed them. In 2 years he had called her the driver more times than he had called her Okafor. He had called her Okafor exactly once, when he signed her transfer paperwork. He had misspelled it. He had written Okafor with a K. Okafor became Okafor. She had not corrected him. She had taken the paper, folded it in thirds, and put it in her breast pocket. The other drivers in the motor pool had their own system of naming. There was a man named Pete who everyone called Crusher because of what he had done to a water bottle on a dare in his first week. There was a woman named Donna who everyone called Doc because she had 2 semesters of nursing school before she enlisted. There was a kid everyone called Rookie, whose actual name was Aaron Giles, and who had been there for 4 weeks, and had the wide-open eyes of someone who had not yet learned to close them. Nadia they called the quiet one. She did not mind it. She had been quiet her whole life, the way certain rivers are quiet, not shallow, not still, just deep enough that the surface does not show what is moving underneath. She had grown up in a house in North Carolina, where her mother worked double shifts at a textile plant, and her father read engineering manuals the way other men read the newspaper, slowly, marking the pages that mattered. Neither of them were loud people. Neither of them had taught her that silence was a weakness. They had taught her it was a choice, and that the people who understood that distinction were worth paying attention to. She had joined the army at 23. Not out of desperation and not out of patriotism, exactly. Out of something closer to purpose. She had wanted to be useful in a way that was physical and real, and impossible to argue with. She had wanted to do something that required the full use of her body and her mind at the same time. Driving came naturally to her. The mechanics of it, the weight of the vehicle, the way a loaded truck responded differently from an empty one, the way road surfaces communicated information through the wheel before the eyes could process it. All of that made sense to her, in a way that felt almost like a language she had been born already knowing. By the time she arrived in Iraq, she had logged more training hours in heavy transport vehicles than anyone else in her unit. That fact also lived in a folder, in the dark. The convoy she was assigned to on the morning of her 113th run was different from her usual routes in 2 ways. First, it was carrying medical supplies, bandages, surgical kits, IV fluid, a refrigerated unit holding medication that had to stay cold, to a clinic on the western side of Fallujah that had been operating with almost nothing for 3 weeks. Second, the convoy included an officer. Lieutenant Owen Marsh was 28 years old and had been in country for 6 weeks. He had the particular confidence of someone who had studied a great deal and believed that studying a thing was roughly equivalent to doing it. He wore his uniform as though it had been pressed that morning, which it had. He carried a clipboard. He referred to the route by its official designation and not by the nickname every driver in the motor pool had been using for a year. He introduced himself to each member of the convoy crew with a handshake and a direct look, which was not a bad quality. When he got to Nadia, he shook her hand, looked at her, and then looked past her at the truck she was assigned to, as though confirming that she and the vehicle were connected in the way he had been told. "You've done this route before?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she said. "How many times?" 11, she said, which was true. Route Michigan was one of her regular runs. She knew where the road narrowed near the second bridge. She knew where the surface became unpredictable after rain, because the drainage was poor on the east shoulder. She knew the specific way the light fell in the late afternoon and made the road ahead look closer than it was. Owen Marsh nodded. He wrote something on his clipboard. He moved on. She watched him go. She did not say anything else. The convoy was 6 vehicles, a lead truck, 4 cargo vehicles, and a rear support vehicle. The lead driver was supposed to be a man named Gary Ellsworth, a corporal with 3 years of experience. Gary had woken that morning with a fever of 103 and was lying on his cot being told by the base medic to drink water and stop arguing. His replacement was Aaron Giles, rookie. 4 weeks in country, no combat convoy experience, perfectly good intentions, and the wide eyes. Nadia heard about the switch while she was doing her pre-mission check on her truck. She ran her hand along the tires, checked the fluid levels, tested the mirrors twice. She heard Pete mention Gary was sick, heard Donna say something about the replacement, and did the math in her head without any drama. She walked over to Lieutenant Owen Marsh, who was reviewing maps with the convoy coordinator near the lead vehicle. "Sir," she said. He looked up. "I'd like to request the lead position," she said. "I've run this route more times than anyone on this crew. If there's an issue at the front, I'll see it first and respond faster." Owen Marsh looked at her for a moment. He did not look unkind. He looked like a man sorting through a system that had already made a decision and was looking for the rule that explained it. "Okafor," he said, and she noticed he pronounced it correctly, which meant he had looked at the manifest more carefully than Captain Brent ever had. "The lead position is occupied. The lead driver has 4 weeks in country," she said. "Everyone starts somewhere," he said. He said it without dismissal, which was almost more frustrating. He said it as a fact about the world, flat and settled. She did not argue. She did not sigh. She looked at him for exactly as long as it took to understand that the conversation was finished. And then she said, "Yes, sir," and walked back to her truck. She took the 4th position, between the 3rd cargo truck and the rear vehicle. In the middle of the convoy, carrying water and surgical kits and refrigerated medicine, driving a route she knew like her own heartbeat, behind a driver who had never been shot at in his life. She ran the route in her mind, while she waited for the convoy to form up. 11 kilometers of open highway, then a left branch onto a secondary road that most maps did not show clearly. Then the second bridge, where the road narrowed to 1 lane and you had to time your crossing carefully. Then the long flat stretch before the city edge, where the road widened again, and the dust came off the ground in long horizontal sheets when the wind was from the west. She knew all of it. She knew it in the way that knowledge settles into the body rather than just the mind. The way a baker knows when dough has been worked the right amount without needing to measure. The convoy rolled out at 5:47 in the morning. The sky was pale orange at the horizon and dark blue directly above. The air smelled of dust and diesel and something faintly sweet that she had never been able to identify in 2 years of breathing it. Nadia pulled out of the motor pool in 4th position, matched her speed to the vehicle ahead, and watched the gate open in front of the convoy like a question being asked. She drove. The highway was quiet in the early light. A few trucks moving in the opposite direction, carrying produce, carrying equipment, carrying whatever it was the city needed at 6 in the morning. A dog sitting on the median who watched them pass with absolute calm. The ruins of a building on the right side, that had been there since before she arrived, and would, she suspected, still be there after she was gone. Aaron Giles held the lead position without catastrophe. His speed was consistent. His lane discipline was acceptable. She watched his brake lights from 4 vehicles back, reading the rhythm of his driving the way you read a conversation. Not just the words, but the hesitation, the confidence, the uncertainty. He hesitated at the bridge. It was a small hesitation, less than 2 seconds, a moment of reading the width of the road and the clearance on either side. She had done the same thing on her first crossing. She had never done it again. She watched his brake lights flare and release, and watched the truck nose forward over the bridge deck, and she thought, he will be fine today. Whether he will be fine next week depends on what happens today. She followed him across the bridge, felt the familiar vibration of the old concrete through her tires, kept 3 truck lengths of distance, and came out the other side into the wide, flat stretch. 2 kilometers ahead, the road bent left and then straightened. Beyond the bend was a long, clear run into the city edge, maybe 4 kilometers of open ground. On a normal run, this was where she stopped watching so carefully. This was where the knot between her shoulder blades began to ease. On this particular morning, she did not ease. She could not have explained why, not precisely. There was nothing she could see yet, nothing her eyes could name. But something in the quality of the road ahead, the way it was empty in a way that felt different from simply being early, made her sit forward slightly in her seat and put both hands on the wheel at exactly the same time. She was 11 kilometers from the city, 4 vehicles back, carrying medicine that 50 people needed, behind a 19-year-old who did not yet know what the road could do. The bend was coming up. 200 meters, 150. She kept her hands steady and her eyes open, and she drove. 300 meters before the bend in Route Michigan, Nadia saw the smoke. It was thin at first, a smear of gray against the pale morning sky, coming from somewhere on the road ahead that she could not yet see around the curve. She did not slow down. She leaned forward against the wheel and watched it, the way you watch a thing before deciding what it means. The convoy maintained speed. From her position in 4th place, she could see the lead vehicle, Aaron's truck, moving steadily toward the bend. He had not seen the smoke yet, or if he had not reacted to it. The trucks between them blocked her full view of the road ahead, which meant she was reading the sky and the road surface and the behavior of the vehicle in front of her all at once, sorting information, cross-referencing it with everything she knew about this stretch of highway. The smoke darkened. It was not a cooking fire. It was not exhaust from another vehicle. It had the thick, oily character of something burning that was not meant to burn. She picked up the radio. Lead vehicle. This is vehicle 4. There is smoke ahead of the bend. Recommend we slow and assess before we clear the curve. A pause. Then Aaron's voice, uncertain, careful. Copy vehicle 4. I see it now. Then Owen Marsh's voice from the vehicle directly behind her, sharp and clean through the static. What kind of smoke? Black and thick, sir, she said. Coming from the road, not the shoulder. Could be a vehicle. Could be something placed. Another pause. She counted the seconds without realizing she was doing it. 1, 2, 3. She watched the lead vehicle's brake lights come on. Good. Aaron was slowing. The convoy compressed slightly as everyone matched his reduced speed. 4, 5. Continue at reduced speed, Owen Marsh said. Eyes open. Report anything that changes. She kept the radio in her left hand and drove with her right. 100 meters from the bend. 80. The smoke was thicker now, definitely coming from the road surface, not above it. She could not yet see the source. The curve was blind. A gentle left arc that meant you could not see more than 50 meters ahead until you were already in it. 50 meters. 40. The lead vehicle cleared the bend. 2 seconds passed. Then Aaron's voice came through the radio, and the calm in it was gone. There's a car on fire in the road. There are men. There are people with flags. They're waving us down. The convoy stopped. Not an orderly stop. A stop the way things stop when the instinct is faster than the training. Brakes applied too hard, the gap between vehicles collapsing faster than it should, the whole line of 6 trucks going still on a road in the open desert with smoke ahead and a curve to their back. Nadia was already moving before the convoy finished stopping. Not her vehicle, not yet, her mind. She had run this bend 11 times. She knew that beyond the burning car, the road had one choice: straight ahead for 2 kilometers with no cover on either side. She knew that the field to the left was firm ground. She had seen trucks pull onto it during a routine detour 8 months ago. The surface had not given. She knew that the field to the right dropped into a drainage ditch within 20 meters of the road edge, which made it unusable at any speed. Left was the only option. She also knew that a burning car in the center of a road, combined with men waving flags at the front of a convoy, was not a coincidence. She had been briefed on this exact approach in training. She had been briefed on it again in a convoy safety meeting 4 months ago that 3 people had attended, including herself. The method was designed to stall the front of a column while action was taken from another direction. She looked in her mirrors. The road behind was clear. No vehicles approaching. The rear support truck had stopped 40 meters behind her. She could see the driver, a man named Colin Hughes, sitting very still with both hands on his wheel. She picked up the radio again. All vehicles. This is vehicle 4. We need to move now. Lead vehicle. Pull left into the field on your left side. Full acceleration. Do not stop to assess. Do not wait. Go. Silence on the radio for 1 second that felt like 10. Then Owen Marsh. Okafor, hold your... She was already moving. She pulled her truck hard to the left, off the road surface and onto the open desert ground, and she floored it. The truck shuddered as the tires went from asphalt to packed earth. A vibration that came up through the seat and into her spine, and she corrected the wheel without thinking, adjusted her line, kept her speed building. She came around the bend on the outside, off-road, and saw everything at once. The burning car was a small sedan, fully involved, sitting in the center of the lane. 3 men stood near the road edge with flags, orange construction flags, the kind that were supposed to mean road work, the kind that in this context meant something entirely different. They were not looking at the burning car. They were looking at the stopped convoy. They were looking at Aaron's truck, 20 meters from the fire. And beyond them, on the far side of the burning car, pulled halfway off the road into the brush, there were 2 more vehicles. Not civilian, not construction. 2 trucks, dark painted, with men standing in the beds. She saw all of this in the time it took her to cross the first 10 meters of desert ground. She did not stop processing. She kept driving, kept accelerating, kept her line, which was now taking her not past the blocked road but around the entire situation, a wide arc through the field that would bring her back onto the road surface on the far side of the burning car, between the stopped convoy and the 2 trucks that were now beginning to move. She got on the radio, her voice was steady. She did not know why it was steady. Some part of her was not surprised by that. Ambush. 2 vehicles far side of the obstruction. All convoy vehicles, break left into the field, maintain speed, follow my line. I am taking position between the convoy and the threat. Do not stop. Do not wait for confirmation. Move. Aaron moved. She saw his truck lurch left off the road. Good. The 3rd and 5th vehicles moved. Donna, driving the 3rd cargo truck, followed Aaron's line almost exactly, which was better instinct than most. The 5th vehicle followed Donna. Owen Marsh's vehicle moved. Colin, in the rear vehicle, moved. She was alone on the desert ground in front of them, driving toward the burning car, putting herself between the threat and the column. The 2 trucks on the far side had started moving. She could hear, not through the radio, just through the air, the sound of the engines, the sound of the flags being dropped, the sound of the whole situation shifting from ambush preparation into ambush action. She kept driving. What happened in the next 4 seconds she could reconstruct afterward only in fragments, the way you reconstruct a dream. Not a continuous film but a series of stills, each one vivid, and the space between them dark. A hard vibration through the ground, felt more than heard, that lifted the rear of her truck and set it down again, with a crack that traveled from the rear axle up through the frame and into her hands on the wheel. She held the wheel. The truck pulled right. She corrected left. The truck fishtailed on the loose ground and she steered into it, not away from it. A thing her body knew to do, that her mind had been taught in a classroom, and had practiced 300 times in training and was now doing at speed on desert ground with a burning car 20 meters to her right. She held the wheel. The truck straightened. She kept driving. She cleared the burning car on the left side, came back onto the road surface with a jolt that sent everything in the cab airborne for half a second. Her water bottle, her spare radio, a folded map she had not looked at in 6 months. And then she was on the road, facing the 2 trucks that had been meant to finish what the burning car started. She did not go toward them. That was not the objective. The objective was the clinic 11 kilometers away that needed the medicine in the back of her truck. She turned the wheel left, cut back across the shoulder, and back into the field, looped wide around the entire obstruction, and came back onto the road, on the other side of the burning car. She got on the radio. Her voice was the same. All vehicles, merge back to road surface north of the obstruction and reform the column. Maintain speed. We continue to destination. One by one, they came back. Aaron came back. He was breathing hard enough that she could hear it through the radio when he acknowledged. Donna came back, her voice precise and clipped. The 5th vehicle came back. Owen came back, saying nothing on the radio, just acknowledging with a click of the transmit button. Colin came back, last of all, and said 2 words, "All clear." She drove. The road ahead was empty. The city edge appeared after the long, flat stretch, the way it always did. Buildings first as shapes, and then as details. Minarets and flat roofs and water towers, and the specific cluster of palm trees that meant the clinic road was 300 meters on the left. Nobody spoke on the radio for the remaining 8 kilometers. She turned onto the clinic road. She drove the 300 meters to the gate. She stopped the truck, set the brake, and turned off the engine. She sat for a moment in the silence. Outside the windshield, a man in a white coat was walking toward the convoy from the clinic entrance. He was shading his eyes against the morning sun. He was looking at the trucks. He would be looking for the refrigerated unit, looking to confirm the cold medication had arrived. She looked down at her hands. They were holding the wheel. They had not stopped holding it. She let go. She opened the door. She climbed down from the cab. Owen Marsh was already out of his vehicle. He was walking toward her. His clipboard was gone. She did not know when he had stopped carrying it. His face had changed. Not dramatically. Not in the way faces change in films. All sudden realization and wide eyes. It had changed the way a face changes when a person has been carrying an assumption and set it down. He stopped 2 meters from her. She looked at him. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. "You pulled us through that," he said. It was not a question. She did not answer it like a question. "The medicine needs to go inside now," she said. "The refrigerated unit has been running on battery since we left the base." He looked at her for another moment. Then he turned and started organizing the offload. She walked to the back of her truck and began opening the cargo doors. Her hands were perfectly steady. The after-action report was 12 pages long. It was written by Lieutenant Owen Marsh in the hours following the convoy's return to base, and it was thorough in the ways that after-action reports are required to be thorough. Times, coordinates, vehicle positions, sequence of events, threat assessment, outcome summary. Owen Marsh was a careful man, and his report reflected that. It was accurate. Her name appeared on page 2, listed under the vehicle manifest. Vehicle 4, Staff Sergeant N. Okafor. Her rank was correct. Her surname was spelled correctly. She noted that without any particular feeling about it. The narrative section of the report began on page 4. She had not asked to read it. She had not been shown it before submission. She found out its contents the same way she found out most things on the base, which was by being present in rooms where information moved through the air and attaching to it what she already knew. The convoy's survival, the report stated, was the result of effective team response and strong situational awareness across the crew. That was the phrase, effective team response. She read it twice. She folded the paper, a copy that Pete had somehow obtained and passed to Donna, who had passed it to her, in the particular way that information moved through the motor pool, which was underground and without attribution. And she put it in her left breast pocket. She thought about what it meant to do something that mattered, and to have the record of it use language designed to be shared evenly, like a blanket stretched to cover more ground than it was made to cover. She did not say anything about it. Not that day. What she did was finish her shift. She completed her post-mission vehicle check on a truck that now had a cracked rear crossmember from the blast shock. She documented the damage. She filled out the maintenance request form in full, with the date and the cause, and the estimated repair time. She handed the form to the motor pool sergeant. He took it, looked at her, and said, "Rough run?" "Medium rough," she said. He nodded and filed the form. She went to the mess and ate rice and a bread roll and drank 2 cups of water. She sat at the end of a table near the window where she could see the airstrip and the pale early afternoon sky. Around her, people ate and talked and laughed at something on the other side of the tent. She ate without rushing and without lingering, and when she was done, she carried her tray to the return and walked back out into the heat. She had a cracked rib. She knew this because she had cracked a rib before, years ago, falling off a fence on her family's property when she was 15, and the feeling was the same. A specific location of pain that deepened precisely when she breathed to her full capacity. Not impossible to bear. Not an emergency. Something the body could work around while it healed, the way bodies were designed to do. She did not report it that day. Not because she was being reckless with her own health, because the process of reporting an injury required forms, and forms required a conversation with the base medical officer, and the base medical officer was a man named Dr. Gordon Price, who she trusted completely in matters of medicine, and not at all in matters of paperwork. The last time she had gone to him with a minor injury, a sprained wrist from a vehicle door in a windstorm, the paperwork had taken 11 days to clear, and during those 11 days, she had been removed from convoy duty and reassigned to administrative filing, which she had done perfectly well, but which felt like being asked to speak in a language she was fluent in, and then having her voice taken away. So she managed the rib with the kind of careful, purposeful restraint that people who have been managing their own problems for a long time know how to apply. She moved more slowly, getting in and out of the truck. She braced slightly when she lifted. She slept on her right side. After 3 days, when the sharpness of it had dulled to something manageable, she went to the medical tent during a quiet afternoon and said, very plainly, that she had taken a chest impact during a recent run and wanted it looked at. Dr. Gordon Price looked at the rib. He confirmed the crack. He wrote it down, and he asked her when it had happened. She told him the date of the convoy. He wrote that down too. He said she was lucky it was not a full fracture, and told her to avoid heavy lifting for 2 weeks, which was advice she absorbed and partially followed. The report of the injury was added to her file. Her file, at this point, contained her original enlistment records, her driving certifications, the misspelled transfer form from Captain Brent, her clean driving record, the maintenance request she had filed after the convoy, and now the medical note. It was a file that, taken in total, described someone competent and reliable and present, but not the shape of what that presence had actually been. Files were good at facts. Facts were not always the same thing as truth. 3 days after the convoy, Owen Marsh found her in the motor pool. She was running a standard check on a vehicle she was scheduled to drive the following morning. He came in through the side door, walked past Crusher and a mechanic she did not know well, and stopped next to her truck. "Okafor," he said. She looked up from the tire she was crouching beside. "Sir." He had his hands in his jacket pockets. He was not carrying the clipboard. She had not seen him with the clipboard since the day of the convoy, and she wondered if he had left it somewhere, or thrown it away, or simply stopped needing it. "I want to talk to you about the after-action report," he said. She waited. "I want you to know that the decisions you made on that road are reflected in what I submitted." She looked at him steadily. The report had called it effective team response. "The way it's worded," she said, careful and even, "it doesn't say who made those decisions." He was quiet for a moment. "No," he said, "it doesn't." She waited again. She had a gift for waiting. She had been waiting her entire career. "I followed the system," he said, and she could hear that he was aware of how that sounded, and she gave him credit for not flinching from it. "The system asks for team outcomes. I reported a team outcome." "The system asked," she said, "and you answered." Another silence. A longer one. He looked at the tire she had been checking. He looked at the motor pool around them. He looked back at her. "If you want me to submit an addendum," he said. "I will." She thought about that. An addendum. A supplementary document, added after the original, which would be read by whoever read addendums, which would be filed behind the original, which would sit in the filing cabinet in the dark. Would it change anything? She asked. Not with bitterness. Not with challenge. As an actual question, asked to someone she now believed was capable of engaging with it honestly. He considered it honestly. She respected that. Not immediately, he said. Maybe not for a long time. But the record would be accurate. She nodded slowly. Yes, she said. Submit the addendum. He nodded. He started to turn, then stopped. I asked if you knew the route, he said. Yes, sir. 11 times, you said. Yes. It wasn't a real question, he said. When I asked it, I knew you'd done the route. I was, he paused, finding the honest word, confirming something I didn't need to confirm. She let that sit in the air between them. She did not help him out of it. I know, she said. He nodded again. He left. She went back to the tire. The night of the third day, alone in the bunk she shared with Donna and a woman named Claire who worked in communications, she lay on her right side with the cracked rib, aching at a low and steady frequency, and she looked at the pale fabric of the tent ceiling above her and thought about the word invisible. It was not a word she had applied to herself in anger. She was not an angry person, not in the outward sense. She was a person who had channeled what might have been anger into something colder and more useful, which was attention. She had paid attention to every road, every vehicle, every shift in light and sound and pattern, because paying attention was the only form of power entirely available to her in every situation she found herself in. The medicine had arrived, she knew that. The man in the white coat at the clinic gate had confirmed it, and a follow-up report, a different kind of report, a logistical one, tracking supply deliveries, had noted the successful delivery. The patients who needed the medication had received it. That had happened because she drove the truck down the road that morning and did not stop. The record said, effective team response. She closed her eyes. Somewhere outside the tent, a generator hummed. A vehicle started up and drove away. The night was cooling down around the base, the desert giving back the heat it had spent all day absorbing, and the air coming through the tent gap was almost pleasant. Her hands were still. She checked them without lifting them, just feeling their position, their weight, resting flat on the blanket beside her. They had shaken, on the night of the convoy, just for a few hours. Not from fear. She did not think it was fear. Exactly, though she would not have claimed there was no fear in it either. From effort. From the sustained, full-body effort of doing something that required everything she had, for the entire duration of doing it, and then stopping. They had shaken in the dark, and nobody had seen them. She had not told anyone that either. She had not told anyone a lot of things. That was not going to change. But the addendum would be filed. The record would be accurate, even if it took the world a long time to find it. She fell asleep while the generator hummed, and she did not dream about the road. 17 years is a long time to spend not thinking about something. Or, more precisely, 17 years is a long time to spend thinking about something in the specific, compressed way that people who have trained themselves out of dwelling learn to do. Briefly, without ceremony. In the small silences between one thing and the next. And then setting it down and picking up what comes after. Nadia had gotten good at setting things down. She had left the army in 2007, 3 years after the convoy. Not because of that day en route Michigan, and not because of the report, and not because of any single thing she could have pointed to and named. She had left because she had done what she came to do, and she was ready to go home and find out what she was when the uniform was not part of the answer. She drove a long-haul route out of a depot in Savannah, Georgia. Refrigerated cargo, mostly, produce, pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, which she had not planned as a theme, but which had simply been the work available when she applied, and which she had taken because the work was honest, and the hours were her own, and the roads were something she understood. She lived in a one-story house 30 minutes outside the city, in a neighborhood where the houses had good-sized yards, and the neighbors mostly kept to themselves, and the nearest thing to a view was a stand of pine trees at the back of her property that she had never bothered to clear because she liked the way the light came through them in the late afternoon. Her mother had come to stay for a month when she first moved in, and had helped her put the kitchen together and plant a small garden in the back. Her father had come for a week the following summer, and had spent most of it fixing a section of the front porch railing that had been loose since before she bought the house. Neither of her parents asked her many questions about her time in the army. They had a shared understanding, the three of them, that the things that mattered had been carried home and would be visible in how she lived. She had a dog named Brick, a medium-sized brown and gray mutt she had found on the road outside the depot 2 years after getting out. He had been sitting in the breakdown lane of the highway with the patient authority of a dog who had decided he was not moving until someone worth traveling with came along. She had pulled over and opened the passenger door, and he had gotten in. That was the whole story. She had few close friends. Some colleagues from the depot she liked genuinely and saw regularly, and a quiet life that she would not have described as lonely, because it did not feel like something was missing. It felt like the right size. It felt like a life scaled to what she actually needed, rather than what the world assumed she should want. She was driving back from a 9-day run to St. Louis when the letter arrived. She did not know about the letter until she walked in the front door and found it on the mat, among the utility bills and advertising circulars that had piled up in her absence. Brick greeted her at the door, with the full devotion of a dog who had been staying with the neighbor and had spent the entire time waiting. She crouched and scratched his ears, stood, picked up the mail, and carried it to the kitchen table. She made coffee. She gave Brick fresh water. She opened the utility bills first, noted the amounts, set them aside. She opened an advertising circular for a hardware store and looked at it long enough to confirm there was nothing she needed, then put it in the recycling. Then she opened the government envelope. It was not the kind of government mail she had received before. Tax notices, occasional veterans benefit updates, the annual forms from the Department of Veterans Affairs that she filled out and returned, and mostly forgot about. This envelope was different. It was heavier. The return address included a department name she recognized but had not expected, the Army Historical Corrections Board. She read the letter standing at the kitchen table, holding her coffee with one hand. The letter was 4 pages. It used formal language, which was the language she expected, but it used it carefully, which she had not expected. It began with a statement of purpose. The Army Historical Corrections Program had been established in 2019 to review after-action documentation from conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, with particular attention to cases where the contributions of individual service members had been inadequately attributed or omitted from the official record. She read that sentence twice, then she kept reading. The program had reviewed the after-action report from the Convoy on Route Michigan in November 2004. In conjunction with that review, researchers had located and analyzed radio transcripts from the event, cross-referenced with vehicle GPS data archived by the logistics tracking system. They had also reviewed footage from a vehicle-mounted camera on the convoy's rear support vehicle, footage that had been archived, unreviewed, for 17 years. She stopped reading. She set the letter down on the table. She picked up her coffee. She looked out the kitchen window at the pine trees in the backyard, where the afternoon light was coming through in exactly the way she liked. Brick sat down next to her feet. She looked down at him. "Okay," she said. She picked up the letter and kept reading. The footage from the rear camera had captured the convoy's response to the ambush in full. From the moment the convoy stopped, to the moment Nadia's truck pulled back onto the road on the far side of the obstruction. The footage showed, with specificity and without ambiguity, the sequence of decisions and actions taken by Vehicle 4. It showed the radio communications, logged and time-stamped. It showed the arc of her truck through the desert field, the position she held between the column and the threat, the line she cut back to the road. The report, the letter stated, was being formally amended. The addendum submitted by Lieutenant Owen Marsh in November 2004. She had not known, until that moment, whether he had actually submitted it, had been located and incorporated into the revised record. She had not known he had submitted it. She sat down at the kitchen table. She thought about a man walking into a motor pool in Iraq and standing next to a truck and saying, "If you want me to submit an addendum, I will." She had said yes without knowing if it would matter. He had done it without knowing if it would matter. It had taken 17 years for it to matter in any official sense. The letter continued. Staff Sergeant Nadia Okafor was to be formally recognized for her actions on November 14, 2004, with the award of the Bronze Star for merit in a combat zone. The citation accompanying the award described, in specific terms, the decisions she had made, and their direct role in the survival of the 6-vehicle convoy and the successful completion of the humanitarian mission. A ceremony was scheduled. It would be held at Fort Stewart, Georgia, which was 3 hours from her house. She was invited to bring guests. She read the letter to the end. She folded it carefully along its original creases. She put it back in the envelope. She put the envelope on the table. Brick put his chin on her knee. She scratched his ears. In the weeks between receiving the letter and the ceremony, she called her parents. Her mother listened without interrupting, which was how her mother listened to things that mattered, and when Nadia finished, her mother said, "I always knew it was in there somewhere." Her father said, "Good," which was the most her father ever said about anything important, and which she understood completely. She did not tell many other people, not because she was hiding it, but because the things she valued most had never required an audience, and that had not changed. She drove to Fort Stewart on a Thursday morning, alone, the way she had done almost everything that mattered in her adult life. Brick stayed with the neighbor again. She wore her dress uniform, which she had not worn in years, and which had required an afternoon of careful attention before it was ready. The drive was 3 hours on familiar highways, and she drove them with her hands steady at 10 and 2, the way she always drove, the way her body had always driven. The ceremony was held in a large room with high ceilings, and folding chairs, and a podium and a flag. There were other recipients. She had not known there would be others, and she found that she was glad of it, because the company made it less like being singled out, and more like being included in something larger, which was what she thought it actually was. A brigadier general she had never met read her citation aloud. The citation said her name correctly. It said what she had done with precision, and no embellishment. The smoke observed, the radio call made, the vehicle pulled left, the position held, the convoy brought through. It did not say that her commanding officer had not initially believed she should hold the lead position. It did not say that the original report had used a phrase designed to distribute credit evenly across a crew. It did not say that it had taken 17 years and a camera that no one had checked for a decade and a half, and a researcher somewhere who had opened a file in a drawer and read an addendum submitted by a 28-year-old lieutenant who had done the right thing, and then apparently never spoken of it again. It did not say any of that. Citations did not say that kind of thing. It said what she had done. She walked to the podium, and the brigadier general pinned the medal to her uniform. She thanked him. She stood for the photographs. She shook hands with the other recipients, and with officials she did not know and would not see again. And she was polite and direct and present, in the way she had always been all three of those things. Afterward, in the parking lot, she sat in her truck for a few minutes before starting it. The Georgia sun came through the windshield at a low afternoon angle and lit up the dust on the dashboard, and she thought, for no particular reason, about the burning car on the road that morning 17 years ago, the way the smoke had looked against the pale sky, the specific shade of it, gray turning to black as the burning deepened. She thought about Aaron Giles, who had been 19 and had moved his truck when she told him to. She did not know where Aaron Giles was now. She hoped he was somewhere good. She thought about Owen Marsh, and a form that had been filed and read and incorporated into the record long after anyone thought it would make a difference. She thought about the medicine in the refrigerated unit in the back of her truck on that morning, the careful cold it had to stay at, the patients at the clinic who had needed it and received it, because she drove down the road and did not stop. She opened the center console of her truck and put the medal inside. Not because it did not matter, because it mattered in a particular way. A way that was hers, that did not need display, that would be there when she opened the console, and would not demand anything when the console was closed. She started the truck. She pulled out of the parking lot and onto the highway. 3 hours. Her hands were steady. The road was clear ahead. She drove.